Tuesday here. The Eagle has landed. Rocket tranquility. We copy you on the ground.
New possibilities are opening up for scientific cooperation between countries.
1-0. Liftoff. Americans return to space as Discovery clears the tower.
Discovery, go and throttle up.
Discovery rocket, go for deploy.
Everybody in the shuttle program, the crew is go for launch.
Rocket, nice to be in orbit.
We have followed in their footsteps to get us where we are today.
Hello and welcome to NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida for the post-launch news conference for NASA and SpaceX's successful Crew-9 launch to the International Space Station. Nick Hague and Aleksandr Gorbunov, the first crew to fly from Space Launch Complex 40 at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, lifted off at 1:17 p.m. Eastern Time and are now in orbit. Joining me now to answer your questions about the Crew-9 launch and the mission and how it went so far are, to my left, Pam Melroy, Deputy Administrator at NASA, Ken Bowersox, Associate Administrator, NASA Space Operations Mission Directorate, Dana Hutcherson, Deputy Program Manager for the Commercial Crew Program, Dina Contella, ISS Program Operations Integration Manager at NASA, and Sarah Walker, Director of Dragon Mission Management at SpaceX. We are joined in the room by media as well as on the telephone line, and we'll get to your questions in a moment, but we want to start off with an opening statement. And Pam, why don't you kick us off? You're good.
Oh, I'm good. Okay, thanks, Daryl. Good afternoon, everyone. It's really wonderful on behalf of Administrator Nelson and myself to say what a fabulous day it was today. It's really a privilege always to be here for a crew launch. First and foremost, of course, Bill and I want to extend our heartfelt thanks to the NASA team, our SpaceX team partners, our international partners, and everyone who had a part in this launch. Those of us, especially former astronauts, know how many hundreds of people it takes, their dedication, their commitment, their collaboration, and their very, very hard work and expertise to get a crew safely off the planet. You may not have seen them on TV today. We see them, and we want to thank them and congratulate them for their part in making today happen. So we always like to talk a little bit. Every launch is unique. They're all special, but there are a couple of things worth talking about today. I think the first one is the fact that we only have 2 crew members instead of 4 on this mission, Nick and Alex. A crew change is not a small thing. It's very hard for Nick and Alex. It's also hard for Zena and Stephanie. But I think it's a reflection of the fact that human spaceflight is complicated and dynamic, and we need to be agile and focus on the mission. And I am incredibly proud both of all 4 of them, but also everyone else who pulled together to make this happen, because it was the right thing to do. And I thought it was a wonderful thing to see Zena and Stephanie here to support their crew, and I know that meant a lot to Nick and Alex as well. So another thing that I'd like to highlight is the fact that we now have 3 pads capable of taking humans to space, something we've never had before. And oh my goodness, next year with Artemis 2, we'll have a 4th. It's on the horizon. That's pretty exciting. So I think it's a reflection of where we are in our space program at NASA, but also the capabilities that the United States has developed. And with that, this new capability is really a testament to the Commercial Crew Program. Over the years, we've made a very strategic investment in the partnership with private industry, which has expanded access to low Earth orbit, not just for NASA, but for many more. This has also set the stage for a future in which space is more accessible to more countries and to more people. And the work being done through the Commercial Crew Program really laid the foundation for that, and we're very proud of that. It's also a part of our long-term vision. Although we do know that we will be going out into the solar system with humans, Earth is our home, and low Earth orbit will always be a crucial and critical place. And the International Space Station has been the cornerstone of LEO for us for over 2 decades. So the International Space Station is unbelievable. It's a really special place. I wish you could all visit it the same way you could visit to see a launch today. It's really an extraordinary capability, as Ken knows as well. It's a critical platform for us because it allows us to look beyond gravity and peer into the second and third order effects of science and really understand the biological and physical processes that benefit life here on Earth, as well as the future of humanity in the solar system. It allows us to build the technologies and the human capabilities to allow us to explore the whole solar system, although Earth will always be our home. It's exciting to see Nick and Alex on their way to the space station. I know they're going to make a tremendous contribution, joining Butch and Suni as a part of Crew-9. They're going to be doing hundreds of very exciting experiments on orbit. There's not even enough time to cover them all, but some of my favorite ones have to do with, plant water management, but also understanding the human cells that create platelets and help us understand blood clotting, both in space and here on Earth. So once again, congratulations to everybody involved in today's amazing and wonderful, successful launch. Go Falcon, go Dragon, and go Crew-9.
Hey, thanks, Pam. And thanks for being here with us today. I know you enjoyed that launch as much as I did. Probably the only better thing would to be on board, but that wasn't meant to be. It's really next time, yeah. It was really impressive the last few weeks to watch the whole team, SpaceX, NASA, all our partners, working through all the planned activities that were required to be ready to launch, but then dealing with some unplanned challenges as well, with the goal all along the way of being ready when the weather cooperated. Well, today we got a weather window. The weather provided us a path. And now Nick and Aleksandr are on their way to the International Space Station. They'll arrive tomorrow about 5:30 Eastern, go through a handover period with the team that's on orbit, and then a week or so later, Crew-8 will come home. The rotation seasons are always the busiest for us in commercial crew and station. We'll be happy to have Crew-8 back home. A few people will be able to take a breather. The space station team won't be part of that team. They're always busy. There's always something going on. But we're hoping that our commercial crew folks will find a little bit of quiet time. And now I'll pass the mic over to Dana so she can tell you more.
Thanks, Ken, and thank you for being here today. We had a really great launch today. It was awesome to see this Dragon launch on 1:17 p.m. this afternoon. It was an exciting day for NASA and SpaceX to make history launching off of Space Launch Complex 40. We've already mentioned that was the first time that we have launched crew and astronauts off of that pad. What an exciting day for the partnership that we have with NASA and SpaceX. And also, we had a Falcon 9 land at Landing Zone 1 beautifully this afternoon as well. Everybody heard the booms. It was great launch today. It's taken a lot of hard work by our teams to get us to this Slick 40 certification capability up and running, and I want to thank both teams for their diligence and agility this summer. I'm pleased to report that Nick and Aleksandr are safely on orbit. We're not tracking any major issues at this time with Dragon, and we didn't see any issues, any major issues going uphill. So it's good to hear, always good to hear when you hear the radio checks and the comms that the crew is doing well on orbit. And they're settling into their journey, which is about a 28-hour journey up to docking with the space station. And so Nick and Alex will get some rest for a sleep period, and then they'll tackle some of the docking preparations tomorrow before reaching the space station. Just, I will say that being this is the first time that we've launched off of this pad, it was incredibly smooth countdown. I will say we were working the weather, and I'll talk about that in a second, but there was one item, not even major, it was a quiet countdown, I will say. But we did, one exciting thing that we were working a little bit earlier in the count was there was a Dragon service section purge air compressor that experienced some high temperatures, and it had a fault on one of the compressors. It kicked over to the second compressor, and we just basically lost redundancy. But a red crew went out there, and they cleared the faults and basically let that compressor cool off for a bit, and they were able to get it back and operational, and it basically served as our backup capability. So everything went nominal there, but it was kind of cool to get to see that action as we're heading into as we're in the countdown. But about the weather, thankfully we had a nice clear window in there. We threaded the needle just perfectly, and we were all experiencing some showers here and there, popping up with a little bit of lightning that was in the forecast, but it was an incredibly awesome day to get to see the launch today, thread that needle in the weather. But I want to just say, for CCP, agility and flexibility are two words that come to mind. Over this summer, I've witnessed a lot of the NASA and SpaceX team partnering for this mission and preparing for it. Agility, hard work, and dedication, certifying this new launch pad, providing more operational flexibilities for our future missions and with human spaceflight, and increasing that capability for us, giving us the capability to launch off of 2 different pads, deconflicting launches. It's an excellent opportunity for us to have this flexibility. And again, on flexibility, we did swap later in the flow. We swapped from Launch Complex 39A over to this new pad. We also did a 2-flight booster, so this is the second time that this booster has flown as well. And then we, as the folks have already talked about, we did swap from a 4-crew to a 2-crew launch, but we will return with 4 crew. And I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about Hurricane Helene a little bit. We were spared the brunt of that weather over here on the East Coast. We know many folks are still struggling with that, so our prayers and thoughts go out to those folks. But it's really amazing to watch this team and how they function. We got through static fire and dry dress before the hurricane came through, and we were able to put the rocket back in the hangar and protect the rocket. But then got the rocket back out yesterday and got back into the launch countdown for a successful launch today. Just amazing recovery and the flexibility that our team has. I want to say thank you to the entire NASA and SpaceX team, our national partners, Kennedy Space Center, and SLD 45 for this partnership and enabling this mission. But our mission isn't over. Dragon is in free flight and it's on its way to the station. We'll continue monitoring all of those operations until we have a safe docking with the space station. So we'll focus our attention on that phase of the mission. For the Dragon, the nose cone is deployed now, and they did have a good phasing burn. The crew is getting out of their suits at this time, and they're planning to grab a meal for some rest period before they don their suits in about 24 hours and getting ready to prepare for the docking operations. And we look forward to these joint operations with the space station, and I will hand it over to Dina to talk a little bit more about that.
And Dina, before you go, just a correction on the title. I misspoke. She is Deputy Manager for NASA's International Space Station Program.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Welcome, and thank you all for being here. I know you all saw it too as a spectacular launch. We're so happy to have Nick and Alex on their way to the International Space Station. I really would like to thank SpaceX and the Commercial Crew Program for the pristine launch vehicle and spacecraft thus far. We're really looking forward to having Dragon on board. Also, everyone before me has discussed already SLC 40 and that new pad, and I'll say from an ISS perspective, this is incredibly important and it's enormously important that we have flexibility of where we can move our launches to, and I really want to thank the team for their agility and ability to move us over to this launch pad and allow us this opportunity to do the crew rotation, get the crew on board ISS. So today on board ISS, it's a typical Saturday, and so we've got a 9 crew on board right now, soon to be 11. But We typically would uplink video of the launch to the crew so they can see it real time and live. And we did that today. We did have a communication gap, so they only got a chance to see the first stage, but they saw the launch in the first stage, and then Suni called down, "Go Dragon!" So we know they got it live. So it's a happy day on ISS. I'm sure they're excited to have the crew on their way. So docking is going to be on Sunday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time, and then we'll have the hatch opening around 7:15 p.m. and then 7:40 is the welcome ceremony. And after that, on the same day, the crew is going to have a safety briefing. They all get together as a crew and discuss safety on board ISS, and then they're going to perform some payload transfers, some science transfers, and generally get ready for the week. And so they'll hit the ground running during the week. We've got science, of course, and we're also doing, as Steve Stitch had mentioned prior to the launch, we're going to reconfigure the Crew-8 Dragon and get Butch checked out in his SpaceX suit. So they'll be doing those reconfigurations of the pallet. We're going to get the Crew-8 and Crew-9 guys ready to go during this handover period when it comes to the Dragons. And those operations are suit fit check, I believe, around Tuesday, and Wednesday, Thursday is the reconfiguration associated with the Crew-8 Dragon to get us back to a regular configuration. And then October 7th or thereabouts is when we're targeting for an undock of Crew-8 and splashdown. So we'll see how the weather goes and how the handover occurs over the next week or so. So in terms of onboard operations on ISS, as I've said many times, it's very, very busy up on ISS. And we're going to start with a port relocation of this Crew Dragon. That's going to happen earlier in October. We're going to go from the forward port over to the zenith port. And then around mid-October, the Russian crew will ingress the aft progress for some cargo operations. And then SpaceX 31, we've got that launch and mission happening at the end of October, and it's about a month-long mission. It's going to be bringing up a lot of science. Looking forward to that. We'll have Progress undock, and then launch and docking of a new fresh Progress going to the Zenith port on the Russian segment in middle of November. And then we'll have around 3 EVAs is what we're thinking on the U.S. operating segment. We're still in the early stages of planning those in the December-January timeframe, and then as well on the Russian segment we'll have probably 1 EVA as well. So those are the upcoming operations. I'll say all throughout we have about 200 experiments, or more than 200 probably, for this particular crew over the coming months. And so we're looking forward to all the science and reaping the benefits of ISS. I'll just wrap it up with another thank you to everyone, all the technical teams, SpaceX commercial crew, but also all the operations and engineering and other support organizations that make this happen. And a big congratulations to all the scientists as well. It really was fantastic, and we're looking forward to having Nick and Alex on board. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Sarah.
Thanks, Dina. It has been a very exciting month here at the Space Coast. So a little over 2 weeks ago, SpaceX launched Polaris Dawn here at Kennedy Space Center. And after almost 5 days orbiting Earth and completing some pretty incredible feats, the crew safely splashed down off the coast of Florida to a new splashdown location, actually, in the wee hours of the morning 2 Sundays ago. And then many teams at SpaceX immediately shifted gears to today's launch of Crew-9. Actually, the flight readiness review within SpaceX was the very next morning, Monday morning. And I like that when that review happens, it's about 2 weeks before launch, and it really focuses the entire company on the stepping methodically through the season of reviews and operations that lead us up to a NASA crew mission. And that brings us to today. So it's an honor to be here, having successfully launched our 9th operational crew mission to the International Space Station for NASA, and it's our 4th Dragon visit to the space station this year already. Gers mentioned Pad 40 yesterday, and a couple people today mentioned it as well. We gave him the day off because today's his birthday. Gers, don't tell me, or don't kill me for saying that. But so I'm here with you today. But he talked about Pad 40, and I'm really excited about it too. It feels like we're bringing Crew Dragon into a long line of Dragon launches off of Slick 40. I think we've launched about 20 cargo Dragons off of that pad, including Cirrus 30 earlier this year. So the longer pad timeline for crew missions, things like our dry dress rehearsal with the crew or integrated static fire, usually make it more efficient to fly our crew missions off of LC-39A, and then we launch at a much higher rate every few days off of pad 40. But everyone's talking about flexibility. LC-39A is preparing to launch NASA's Europa Clipper mission, which is an interplanetary mission, and it needs to launch at a very specific window of days to meet its interplanetary trajectory. So literally the planets need to be aligned for this launch. Can't believe this industry. And so the flexibility was key, and I'm really grateful to the teams that put all the work into last year building this pad, and then all through this year certifying it, so that we could have that flexibility and move the crew handover over to, or the Crew-9 launch over to pad 40. I'm happy to report that Falcon 9 did safely deliver Dragon and the crew to their intended orbit, and I think several have already mentioned that we'll arrive tomorrow around 5:30 Eastern time, so a little over a 24-hour, I think a 28-hour transit to the space station. So this was the first time in a while that we had a 2-crew uphill mission. I actually think it's poignant that Bob and Doug christened Pad 39A as a 2-crew mission, and then Nick and Alex christened Pad 40 for us. That's pretty neat. And Nick and Alex did a great job with their slightly modified training to make that adjustment. It was great working with them, and we look forward to welcoming Butch and Suni to the Crew-9 crew for a full increment of critical science this fall and winter. I do think it's important to say here that at SpaceX, we were all cheering on our NASA and our Boeing friends for a successful CFT mission. Bringing new human spaceflight capabilities is exciting, but these early test flights come with lessons learned always. We still learn something every single time we fly. We've had our share of hardware challenges that the NASA teams have been incredible to work through with us. So we were excited to see Starliner return home last month, and we're ready to support NASA and humbled to be a small part of this mission. I did get to video chat, actually. Thank you for letting us do that with Butch and Suni last week. And just to welcome them to the Dragon family, to the Crew-9 increment. And they seem to be doing great. They're excited for a bit more time in space. So it was good to see their faces. There is already a SpaceX suit up on ISS that will fit Suni. She was able to do a fit check for us a couple weeks ago, which is great. And then we're sending one up for Butch on Crew-9. So he'll get to try his on as well. And then we'll have a port relocation to welcome the cargo vehicle, CRS-31, that's coming up in about a month. And so they'll all get a chance to put on there's all 4 Crew-9 crew will get the chance to suit up for that port relocation as well. After Crew-9 docks to the International Space Station and unites Nick and Alex with the rest of their crew, the next big event for us will obviously be bringing Crew-8 home to their families about a week from now. The undock is currently planned for no earlier than October 7th, and that gives the on-orbit crew time to hand off duties and reconfigure both vehicles for the next phase. So once the crew is ready, we'll look at the weather at all of our available landing sites and select the best day to bring the crew home, as always. And then I do just want to say a huge thank you to the leaders on this panel. Thanks for your close partnership leading up to this launch. It's an honor for all of us to be a part of these human spaceflight missions and support all the science and research that happens up on ISS. So thanks for letting us be a part of it.
All right, thank you for your opening remarks to the entire panel here. We'll now take questions from the room and from the phone bridge, but we'll start in the room. So please raise your hand, state your name and affiliation, and to whom you are asking your question. And we'll start in the third row back here with Will.
Thanks, Daryl. Will Robinson-Smith with Spaceflight Now. Thanks again for taking the time to speak with us this evening. Question for Dana and Sarah. With Butch and Suni returning on Dragon, have you been able to use the Crew-8 Dragon on orbit to do some remote Dragon training with Butch and Suni, or how has their acclimation to that returning vehicle been working and will work in the upcoming months? Thanks.
I'll start it. So, you know, actually with Crew-8 being up there and Butch and Suni already up there, they've already been following along with all the procedures and some of the training as well, just, you know, kind of witnessing how things are happening on the station, how this works with Dragon. So they've already been engaged very heavily with the crew that's already up there with Crew-8. And so I think they're just really excited to get their vehicle up here to tomorrow so that they can really learn and learn more about the vehicle that's going to bring them home.
Yeah, and we do have a small amount of onboard training that we work together on for but yes, they're super familiar with Dragon. That's been up there the whole time that they've been up there. There was also this brief period between when Starliner undocked and when Crew-9 arrives, that you always want to have a safe return vehicle for the crew in any possible contingency scenario that could happen on ISS. And so they got very familiar with the Crew-8 vehicle. That was their vehicle for about a week. And then Crew-9 is their nominal return vehicle that will get up there tomorrow.
And I will say we do have some additional training scheduled, but again, it's things like habitability and just making sure that for their standard ride home that they know they have all the details of all the finer points. And like she has mentioned, they're going to get the port relocate as a big training exercise that will occur as well.
All right, the gentleman in the third row here.
Thank you. My name's Trevor. I'm a local freelance photojournalist. This is for Ken, maybe Sarah, and Pam if you have anything to add. It certainly seems like your partnership is going incredibly smoothly. You both continue to learn massively from one another and will continue to as Artemis progresses this decade. I started covering space launches about 10 years ago with CRS-4, one of SpaceX's first flights with landing legs on it. It's pretty incredible to see how you guys have progressed over the time. Recently SpaceX and the FAA have been sort of quarreling quite publicly at times about the continuation of Starship, and I see it as kind of an interesting contrast to your guys' success. I'm curious if you could share, more deeply in the way that you do second and third order science, things that you have surmounted together or, collaborations that have led to your success. Thank you.
Well, so I can start kind of at the high level, and you guys can talk about the detailed working level. What I've seen is that SpaceX and NASA kind of complement each other, right? There's strengths that SpaceX has and strengths that NASA has, and weaknesses that we each have, and it's a really great counterbalance. Sometimes NASA maybe isn't aggressive enough, and SpaceX will help us think about things that we could push a little harder on. Sometimes SpaceX might be trying to push hard, and they'll listen to us when we say, hey, we'd really appreciate it if you hold back a little there. And it's a great dynamic, and it's allowed us to, I think, have some great success together.
Yeah, nothing to add. It's been a really fun partnership, honestly. We get in a room together and we lay out all the data and we solve problems together. And it's been a privilege to be a part of that. And maybe just to be clear, this launch is also an FAA licensed launch, right? And we have a great partnership with them. They licensed this launch and allowed us to launch today. So we're thankful for that.
9 successful crewed launches, I should say, from Cape Canaveral and Kennedy here. Ken, you have a question?
Thank you. Ken Kramer, Space Up Close. For SpaceX, I get a question brought up Polaris Dawn. What is exactly for a free-flying Dragon, how long can it actually stay up there? And I'm wondering if you're working on maybe an extended duration capability at all. Because you're going to fly this polar mission. I'm wondering if NASA is interested in flying astronauts on a polar mission, a longer mission than just a few days, it seems, might be really interesting. Thanks.
That's an interesting question. The polar mission is planned to be a similar duration, 3 to 5 days, and that we have found that to be somewhat of a sweet spot for Dragon, but and just its capabilities, its consumables, but a lot depends on what the mission objectives are, right? With Polaris Dawn, we had a spacewalk where we drained the entire cabin to vacuum and used consumables in a very different way on that mission. One thing that we actually found very challenging, you notice we sat on the pad for about 2 weeks for Polaris Dawn, because unlike missions where we have a destination where we need good weather, not just at the launch pad, but all the way up the ascent corridor to protect for any sort of ascent launch escape where the crew needs to come home safely that day. That's that is one set of constraints, winds and waves and everything to make sure is go for launch. For Polaris Dawn, we didn't have somewhere we could go and wait a while to look for a good return opportunity, so we had to look 5 days into the future to make sure that weather was go for a return for at least one landing site, and that was really challenging. And I think 5 days is getting pretty close to where it's really hard to predict the weather. So I think that would be a concern of mine, extending it much longer. But again, I think one thing that we love to do is get new ideas about what would be an exciting mission, the polar mission, some of the objectives on Polaris Dawn, and then crafting the mission around those objectives to optimize for what they want to achieve. So, yeah, some of the things that I think about.
All right.
What about extending? Is that possible at all?
Yeah, not much longer than 5 days. But what I was mentioning is that I also there are constraints like weather that make a shorter mission better. There are constraints like squeezing in all the science objectives that actually would make you want to lengthen it a bit. And that's why that mission was a 3 to 5 duration, but we got to go all 5 days, which was great. We're weighing between making sure the weather stayed good for return, but also that we had enough time, should it stay good, to complete all the science that they wanted to achieve. So it's just a mission by mission conversation with the customer and what objectives they want to achieve, and then how long it would take to achieve them.
All right, question from Gina.
For Pam, you talked, we know there's a busy launch cadence the rest of the fall, so what else are you looking forward to? Your Clipper? Are you ready to talk about that a little bit for me?
Yes, I mean, yeah, it's been a little busy for everybody. So proud of the Clipper team, right? They had a late-breaking hardware issue that it was just extraordinary. The JPL team, the NASA team, and a bunch of our partners came together very quickly to resolve that issue. Extremely high radiation environment around Europa, around Jupiter. And so they managed to put that one to bed in a time frame, frankly, none of us thought was possible. It was really incredible to see. So we're very excited. They are doing very well. They had a rough summer, the same way Ken was talking about giving the commercial crew program a little bit of time off. It'll be very nice. We're in kind of that phase where everything is here to be buttoned up for an October 10th launch. And so the ops team in particular is taking a little bit of a rest in preparation for that. So right now, we have no reason to think they can't make the opening of their window on the 10th. But, you know, there's still a lot, you know, weather, lots of other things that can happen. And so I think they're going to make their planetary window we don't have any serious concerns about that right now. So very excited. That's going to be an amazing mission. So
Go to the other side of the room now, and lady in third row.
Hi, D Wise with NASAspaceflight.com. So my question is for Sarah. Yesterday, it was announced that Dragon has a contingency to use Super Dracos to perform a tolerable splashdown in the event all parachutes were to fail. So is this contingency still available in the event of a launch abort, or are all of the hypergalls entirely depleted? And additionally, has this flown previously before Polaris Dawn, and could you tell us what missions it has flown on?
Sure. So, yeah, I think this is a really great example of just continuing to innovate. So Dragon has all along been designed to all of the human spaceflight standards and the fault tolerance, and thinking about the next worst thing that could go wrong, and then what would the vehicle do in response, and then the next worst thing. And so I think Gerst mentioned, I haven't watched the conference yesterday yet, but I think he probably mentioned that this is far, far beyond any scenario that we could reasonably anticipate. But I love that engineers across NASA and SpaceX are always continuing to think about what's the next thing we could do to make it a little safer and a little safer and a little safer. But to roll in something like this, I think the most important thing, especially in the software development, is to make sure that it is not used unless it is needed. And there was years of working together with our NASA partners to make sure that we really got that right. So We flew it, I believe, on board the Crew-9 mission, but there are a number of, basically you need all of your sensors, all of your redundancy, a number of systems to all be working perfectly healthy to be able to tell you, yes, this critical capability is needed, go ahead and activate it. And if any one of those redundant triplicate sensors is out of family or not being used for the mission, the whole thing is disabled. And so on Crew-9, there was actually a GPS that was acting, a GPS sensor that was acting out of family, and we took it out of the voting scheme and we're using our other two. And so that was one of the criteria that we set from the beginning to not use this capability because we were down one sensor. So while it was on board, it was deactivated on Crew-9, and then it's on board Crew-8 as well. And all of the criteria are met for Crew-8, so it is an active capability on Crew-8. But really, I just think it's a testament to continued innovation beyond what we've ever reasonably done before in terms of fault tolerance and different ways to bring the crew home for a safe splashdown. So really proud of that development that we did together.
Let's go to the phone line now and get a question from Tariq Malik with Space.com.
Hello, yes, thank you very much. And my question is for Sarah on the stand-up of the new crew-rated launch pad. It was very interesting to watch Nick and Alex as they were the first ones to sign the white room there. And I'm just very curious to find out what was new or unexpected in running the actual launch here with the crew. It seemed like the drive might have been a little bit longer. I guess the white room seems larger. And are there any upgrades that you made for this pad that you're going to bring back to 39A? Thank you.
Yeah, there's not a lot of differences. The crew arm was definitely brand new, and we rolled in a few tweaks for operability, ease of operability. I think you can work on it when it's stowed, and it's got some good hydraulic systems there to retract and extend. So largely it's the same functionally. The one major difference, and you can see it visually, is the escape system for the pad teams working out there and the crew itself. If there were a reason to leave the pad, rather than leaving the planet, leave the pad to launch another day. On 39A, which we inherited from a long, rich history of NASA missions, it already had these slide wire baskets, which are used as that secondary method of egress. And so the crew gets in these slide wire baskets and they go down this cable system and getting some armored cars that take them away from the pad. Similarly, but it looks a little different, on 40, it's a chute that actually deploys and almost like a slide, an enclosed slide that individual crew members can go down, and we tested it in so many configurations. You can safely send an incapacitated crew member if someone was injured, to be sure that everyone can get off of the pad safely in a very similar manner to the slide wire baskets. But because we weren't inheriting a system that was already there, we were able to choose that system, and it's I think a pretty smooth ride. I've gotten to go down it myself in some of the early testing, and so that's a major difference. I'm trying to think can you guys think of any other differences?
I think you hit on the major difference, but I would just add that, it's pretty amazing to watch what SpaceX has done with 39A, and then just taking the small tweaks, the little lessons learned that they found, and as they build up the new crew capability at Slick 40, they incorporated just a couple of little things here and there. But I think the big one is definitely the emergency egress system, which all of our NASA rescue and Cape Side rescue folks did get to test out. And so it's a new capability, something that's been used in the industry far and wide. So it's just amazing to watch the innovation and just the things that they are able to look at an old design or older design and be able to incorporate some new ideas.
Has anybody else ridden the slide wire chute?
Maybe.
It looks like fun. Yeah.
Next, I want to do it.
Yeah. No Steve
NASA gave us
Stitch
a long list of scenarios. We had to tweak this or tweak that and try it again, so there were plenty of test subjects.
I bet. All right. Any other questions from the room? Yes, sir.
Yes, I'm Bert Dick with the National Space Society. Question for Pam or any other panelists. During the crew arrival, Nick Hague talked about the changing crew dynamics and the effort to train for 2 crew members versus 4. He mentioned the NASA SpaceX team and Zena and Stephanie, and just wanted to see if there, as you've documented, what lessons learned that maybe could be applied in the future, because it was so important, as you mentioned, Pam, about adaptability and being able to handle these changes in such a short time frame.
I think for the specifics of the lessons learned, I think I'll maybe pass it over to either Sarah or Dina.
So your question was related to Nick and Alex and
training for two instead of four.
Going from the change in crew dynamics from 4 to 2, and how everyone had to adapt to train for that contingency.
It was relatively minimal. So we nominally trained the pilot as the backup commander. It's something that we've done all along in preparation for something exactly like this. And so Nick already had all of that training. There was just a little bit of supplemental. We provided a few days he spent in the simulator just to get familiar with, okay, now we are going to go sit in the seat instead of that one. But overall minimal, I think 3 or 4 days of Nick and Alex partnering with us in the simulators.
And, you know, in terms of the role that Alex had, it was not like a full-blown co-pilot, as to say, but more helps the commander, helps Nick with the situational awareness of what, you know, his other crewmates may have provided with them. You know, having a full crew, you get a lot more situational awareness. So there's a little bit of that. You know, one, for example, item was that we do have SIMO interpretation available if needed with a Russian crew member as a second crew. There were a few areas of interest, I'd say, associated with that. You know, what I understand is that they did a really fantastic job working as a pair instead of having the entire full crew. And some other areas, you know, 2 crew versus 4 crew would be things like if you had something like a fire or something on board. Well, you want to make sure you have a very clear understanding of what roles everyone has, and that would be different between 4 and 2. So I think they went through some of that Delta training. I'm not sure of any particular small lessons learned, but I do know that it was really successful, and I'm sure that the training team and the crew in general will come back with a kind of a list of tweaks, things they learned.
Yeah, Pam and I were talking just before the conference here. Both of us have experienced swap outs on crews. Something that really helps is our training teams try to get our crews enough similarity that if you did bring in a new crew member, they can fit pretty fast, right? It just happens with the way the training plans and the training approach is laid out for all of our missions. But then we always try to incorporate lessons learned from each individual flight into future flights, and I'm sure we'll collect all those lessons learned and plow them forward.
Yeah, if I could make one additional observation, every crew member has a role. That's actually part of the training, is you divide up responsibilities. Now, in some cases, if you're stowing 2 suits instead of 4, those jobs are actually easier. But really the real problem of going to a smaller crew is that the workload is higher on everyone. And I know that Zena and Stephanie were there for anything that they had principal responsibility for, to, you know, hand over their gouge, to, you know, give the tips and help coach them through it. But, you know, I'd also like to remind everybody, you know, Bob and Doug plowed the ground for us pretty well. They worked it really hard. From the very beginning, they only planned to have 2 crew members. So I am quite sure that they provided a lot of really good suggestions for how to, you know, deal with some of the extra workload that you only have 2 people to handle going up, especially like right now is a really busy time for a crew. So I'm sure they had all the help they needed.
All right. Any other questions in the room? Yes, sir. Second row here.
Hi, Nick Samuel with the Vero News. And this is to anybody who wants to answer. Can you talk about the name of the capsule and why that name was chosen?
Freedom. That was named by Kjell Lindgren.
Yeah, that's correct. So the crew gets to name each capsule, and this capsule's flown before, so it's named by the first crew, and then they carry the name forward.
And it is a nod to the Freedom 7 capsule, he said in some social media comments, where he was giving that nod to Alan Shepard and his Mercury capsule. So
the teaser that we do have one last crew capsule coming off the line early next year, so there will be one more that needs a name. I'm not sure if the crew's named it yet.
For Crew 10, right?
That's its planned capsule, yes.
Very good. Yes, sir. In the back row. No.
Hello, Manuel Masanti, Exploración Espacial. I apologize if you mentioned this before. I understand that NASA is going to reassign or try to reassign Sina and Stephanie on our future flights. Could you explain how does that work? Do you need to find a specific mission for them according to their capabilities, or how does this work?
Well, I can talk about it at a high level. I mean, our flight operations group takes a look at the skills required on different missions. They'll work with the commercial crew and ISS program to come up with a complement that works. And then for Zena and Stephanie, we'll find places where their skills fit, right? And then when it's appropriate, the FOD team will work through the approval process, and then we'll announce when they're on a crew. Anything you guys want to add?
I'll just say that we do have a panel that very specifically includes the international partners, the flight operations team, other management that helps to determine that. And as Ken mentioned, we look through all the skill sets and and all the different puts and takes of what's necessary for the different crew rotations, and that panel just has a standard process.
All right, very good. One more question we'll take from Will.
Thank you so much, Will, again with Spaceflight Now. Question for Sarah, I think, sort of teasing ahead to the next Dragon that's coming online nominally with Crew 10. Are there any new capabilities or technologies built into that Dragon that are maybe debuting with that either NASA or SpaceX wanted to roll out? Thanks.
Yeah, I can't think of anything big off the top of my head, so maybe I can explain how the change process works. So we have now, that will be our 8th capsule in the fleet, 5 Crew Dragons and 3 Cargo Dragons. And whenever we learn something from a flight and we want to roll it in, it gets retroactively rolled into all of the capsules in the fleet. And sometimes we look at what timing makes sense or what capsule's next to fly again. But generally, all of the capsules keep up with all of the things we learn and all the changes that we make. And so it will incorporate changes that have already been rolled in all along with the original one. So I can't think of anything big that's happened recently that would be new first flight on that vehicle and not yet on the other capsules, but we try to keep all the capsules in the fleet very, very similar.
All right, and one last question here in the front. The teal? Oh, sorry, in the back.
So traditions are a big thing in spaceflight, and on 39A we see phone calls from the top of the tower. Seemingly without a phone on 40, was this tradition carried over in any way, or was there a conscious choice to leave that tradition with historic launch complex 39A? And that's mostly for Sarah, but if anyone else.
I was going to say it was mostly for the astronauts we have on the panel here. It seems like there's a number of special traditions that you guys as an office and as individuals carry. I don't know if you have any words on tradition.
Traditions change throughout the years, so I mean that sounds like a new one. We didn't get to make phone calls when I was doing that. We got to wave on the TV
shuttle.
and make little signs, but
I think it's a throwback to Apollo. On
yeah.
Astronaut Stephanie Wilson told me that they phased it out going forward. There were some problems punching the keys and getting a line out. They obviously get to say goodbye there at the astronaut crew quarters, and so it looks like they phased it out.
And you can make a phone call from the space station now.
Now they can call when they arrive on orbit. Yeah.
All right, that's going to do it for this briefing. Thank you to all of our panelists for joining us and giving your comments. Really appreciate it. If you'd like to listen to crew audio, we'll have it streaming live all the way up to the International Space Station. You just snap the QR code that you see there at the bottom of your screen, or go to nasa.gov/multimedia. And to continue following the Crew-9 mission, stay tuned to our streaming platform, NASA Plus, or go online at plus.nasa.gov. We leave you now with a look back at the highlights of Crew-9 from suit up to liftoff. Have a good evening.
And so it's great to see Nick Hague and Aleksandr Gorbunov here in suits that are looking good.
There's Shannon Walker with the 2 crew members laying out the rules to a card game. Crew-9 leaving the suit-up room and now on the move inside astronaut crew quarters. Nick Hague, commander of Crew-9, with his crewmate Aleksandr Gorbunov.
they'll have a chance here to say a few words with those who are closest to them.
This will begin a roughly 20-minute drive with a full security escort across NASA's Kennedy Space Center.
You can see them doing the SpaceX flight suit lean back.
Walking the crew access arm.
Crew have ingress the capsule.
Side hatch is closed.
3, 2, 1, ignition. Ignition full power. And liftoff of Crew-9. Go SpaceX, go Falcon, go NASA.
Liftoff of Crew-9 now soaring to the International Space Station.
1 Alpha. Stage 1, propulsion is nominal. Copy, 1 Alpha.
Those 9 Merlin engines now providing 1.7 million pounds of thrust, propelling Falcon 9 and Crew 9 and continuing to get good calls from teams here on the ground.